From bookworm to badass. Today on Serious.Fun, I'm talking with Grace Lee. Grace works in tech as a user experience designer, and she currently resides in Boston, Massachusetts. She's an OG Recess community member and a close personal friend. In this conversation, we cover her personal success story, a tale of growing up as a non-active bookworm and blossoming into a gym badass. This multi-year transition came with many trials, lots of patience, big wins, small wins, and learning to give her body what it needs. You'll learn about how recess impacted her perspective on fitness and life, and I'm so proud to have contributed to her transformation and to be her oppa. Please enjoy this serious, fun conversation with Grace Lee.
Okay, there we go. Now I figured out how to do it. Oh, cool. Okay, that works. Absolutely. That's so cool.
I'm fine.
Cool.
Everything's fine.
Yeah, this is really accurate. Wow, the borders on this thing are cool. Sorry.
Wow.
Just marveling at this right now.
Well, for those who might just be listening to what we're doing, this is the Serious.Fun podcast. I'm your host, Brooks Meadows, and I am here with my friend, Recess community member, and a user experience designer. And I imagine she's going to tell you way more about it than I can. I'm here with Grace Lee, and she has a fantastic Zoom background. So I'd encourage you, if you can go and find the video version of this, either on YouTube or on our Facebook page, that you watch this episode. It's going to be worth it. I promise. What's going on, Grace?
Nothing much, just playing around with Zoom. And actually, you were kind of close with the Tiger King thing because I don't have Tiger King background, but I do have a tiger pillow. So
Oh, are you going to one day become a tiger mom?
probably, yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
that's amazing. Could you tell people, so like the purpose of this show is to bring on coaches and friends and recess community members to talk about a myriad of things. One, I want to talk about some things that might be serious, like your job, like your story, like emotions that are attached to story and physical stuff, but also fun, and you clearly with this beautiful background are also a very fun person. And so I'm excited to have you here. Let's just start with your profession. What do you do currently?
Okay, so currently I'm technically furloughed.
Yeah.
Yeah, because coronavirus, as a lot of people are. So, I'm one of many. And professionally, though, my title is user experience designer. I've heard many ways of explaining this thing, but it basically just help you experience anything better. That's super general, but it's specifically to technology. I can help apps and websites and things be a much better experience than what they might be.
Yeah.
And specifically in my next leg of my journey, I want to focus in on mental health technology and, really bringing about that kind of evolution, because we still don't actually see enough mental health technology out there, or, really good physical wellness technology. It still feels like very small, and it hasn't made its big reach yet. And I really want that to be a big thing.
Yeah. Well, what has inspired you to move into that realm?
My crazy love of psychology and just my utter fascination with it. I think about it every single day. And I didn't actually think about it being a career until like last year, which is crazy. I just always kind of had it in the background, like I was just, oh, this is just the way I think. Never thought like, hey, you can actually contribute to that field, that you're geeking out about. So it wasn't until like last November, I was like, okay, let's actually try and actively look for new opportunities and things. So now with coronavirus kind of shaking up everything, it's really given me this like really wide open door to go explore. Literally like this background, everything is fine.
Everything's fine.
Life is like, yeah, just go through the door now. You wanted this, you go get it now.
I could not even begin to describe how much that resonates with me. If not now, just at other times in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, you have been a recess community member for how long?
Let's see. So I moved to Memphis in October 2017, but I don't think I actually came to the gym till you're gonna have to help me remember. Was it like summer 2018? Because I was
I'm
still recovering from an ankle injury at the
huh.
time. It was like
Okay.
August 2018.
August 2018. We've had David on the show before, and David was one of our early like OG community members.
Right.
And going on a 2-year stint, I'm going to put you in that category as well. Could you trace back as early as you want to go back your history with health and exercise, where it fit into your life growing up, and how that's evolved over time? Let's
Yeah.
do it. We're going.
It was awful. No. So when I was born, no, when I was like 5 years old, I was, very active. I ran around the entire house, loved jungle gyms and things like that. But when it came to actual school, exercising and things like sports and teams and running the mile, like for a time or whatever, I hated all that stuff. It was, I don't know. It just didn't resonate with me in any kind of way. I didn't have fun with it, except for like, dodgeball and things like that. Then it became fun. So I never really had a good grasp of my own physicality, and it definitely went downwards from when I was like that 5-year-old kid who was running around the playground to, when you go into middle school and high school, you just become even more sedentary if you're not in an active lifestyle already. And it wasn't until like college, I'd say, that I even tried going to a gym for the first time. Didn't know what the hell I was doing, not at all. And I was just kind of trying to figure out how you work out. So I'd, download workouts from Pinterest or try out exercise plans and things here and there. But it didn't really hit home until I started lifting weights. And I was like, oh, I kind of like this thing. I kind of like feeling strong, especially because I'm a 5'1" Asian woman, and there's a lot of stereotype around being like small and meek and like, oh, save me. So this really hit home where I was like, oh, cool. I get to do the exact opposite of that thing, and I get to like crush some weights. Still didn't know exactly how to do that, but I was attempting to and just learning from weightlifters and things I saw on Instagram. And then that's around the time I moved to Memphis. And when I came to Recess, I was actually, you guys taught me a lot about how to move my body and like look into things and kind of learn organically from it. So I feel like I have a much better grasp nowadays from it.
Tell me about that first time you walked into a gym. I imagine it was either with a friend or by yourself.
I think it was by myself. I hated it. It was like, so there's 2 gyms that I consider. One is like, the apartment gym. It's like safe, because most of the time there's no one there. It's incredibly small. There's like a treadmill most of the time, and maybe a few barbells, or not barbells, a few dumbbells. So if we're technically calling it a gym, then that would be my first experience. And I think I just went there on my own. Again, I just walked in and was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'd like, would poke a dumbbell kind of thing. First time I actually went to an actual gym, it was kind of the same thing, but I was even more intimidated because there's just other people like all around knowing what they're doing. And I would have to like read the machines. I still read the machines, but I'd go up to a machine and be like, what the hell does this thing do? And try and replicate the motion and just do exactly what the little picture told me to do, not having principles like, oh, keep your core tight whenever you can, and just really good underlying foundations. Didn't have any of that. So I love watching those awkward videos of when people are doing gym things and it doesn't make sense, and they're like, why are you doing that? Like, there's like that pulling machine, but some guy's like doing this. Yes, I love watching those videos.
And he's like, on the one hand, it's like, it's definitely worth a good like chuckle, and on the other side of it, I like, as a coach, I just feel terrible for them, like
that was me.
Nobody's going in and like just offering this person just a little bit of guidance. It's indicative. Look, I like you. I mean, I did, unlike you, I grew up playing sports. So I at least like grew up with like a systematic way of learning something physical. But I didn't have a strength coach. I didn't have like an exercise coach. I got cut from my baseball team 4 years in a row in high school. So I never like had like a conditioning coach. I played baseball in college, no less, because I continued practicing. I was good enough to play in college, but we didn't have a strength and conditioning coach. So our first, like my first weight room was like a converted racquetball court, you know?
Ooh.
And so like that was my apartment style gym because it was in a racquetball court. So nobody really used it all of that much. And I also, even coming from a sports background, felt and being comfortable walking into pretty much any room and having a conversation with people, I experienced tremendous amounts of like anxiety may not be the right word, but I was very hyper aware of what was going around me. And I was a little bit like self-conscious looking a certain way. And I don't know. I'm not sure how long that phase for me lasted. Probably about a year, where I was like just still trying to feel around, but I could put on this like bravado, macho-y type, yeah, I know what I'm doing thing. More like the guy that hangs out on the side and talks about what's going on, more so than being the guy that's like actually doing that thing. How long did that phase of just being generally uncomfortable in a gym last for you?
I think it was like a year to 2 years. And it's actually interesting you mentioned the self-conscious thing, because I remember also thinking and staying away from the professional gyms for a long time because I had it in my head that you needed to already be fit to go to a gym. Like you need to be a certain fat percentage before you can actually go into a gym, which is crazy because you go to a gym to work out or do whatever your fitness goals are. But I just had it in my mind because actually kind of similar to sports, right? Like I didn't think that I could do sports unless, or like even attempt to do any kind of sports unless I was already at a certain level. So that that kind of intimidation kept me so far away from everything. I didn't even try, which was the bad part. So that intimidation factor, I like really tiptoed in. And then I finally realized like, dude, what are you talking about? Everyone is like either figuring it out, or if they're experienced, they're just doing their thing. But that took like, about 1 to 2 years to really get it through my head. Like, yeah, you can try it. You can try
You walk
anything
in
you
and
want
instead
to.
it's like the gyms were like a roller coaster. It was like BMI or body fat percentage.
Yeah,
It's like
you must be this
yeah,
BMI to ride.
yeah,
That's
that's it.
exactly what it felt like.
Yeah.
Because like the people who seemed really confident in the gym, they were the ones who looked already like super jacked because they had been there a lot. And I was like, what do I do?
Man. And the other thing that you said that's interesting to me that I've actually given thought to, like I grew up playing baseball. So my dad played baseball. So we grew up, I'd play catch. I'd play in the neighborhood with my friends. But, as soon as I was 10 years old, it was like competitive baseball. And over the years, whether it was, say, the atmosphere that I was in or the, I guess like innate sense that I had about being a baseball player as a competitor, it was almost like if you weren't going to compete, then why play at all? And it's only lately that I've been like, man, that's really robbing either myself of a tremendous amount of joy of playing other sports, or so many other people of just the joy of playing a game.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's like,
Yeah.
and I never even thought about joining like local teams, like, because I was like, I'm still like kind of intimidating, like, oh, they're gonna expect a certain level if they're like looking to compete. But now I'm like, oh, there's amateur leagues out there, people who literally put amateur in the title. And I'm like, yes, that thing, let me go to that thing and try it out.
Well, it's like this. I mean, I'd feel the same way about going into a dance studio. It's like, well, if I don't have enough prerequisite amount of dance skill,
Yes.
I shouldn't go to this class. And have I ever been to a dance class? I think I've only been to like one dance class proper. I have witnessed a few dance classes.
That's right.
The T-Goods experience.
There's a video of you out there.
There is, and
that
apparently,
you guys should check out.
it blew up. I'm going to give her a shout out the T Goods experience, Hallie and Grace have been like clients or patrons in her class, and there was a bring your boo experience, I think, for Valentine's Day. And so Hallie had been like building up this really sexy dance for the build your boo experience, and they asked us to come, and of course, like, they got all their film crew, and they're like gonna turn this into some really awesome content. And it didn't just turn into like some awesome content, and Hallie and I were very prominently featured, and we were the only Caucasian people in the video, so it stood out just a little bit more. And that video ended up becoming like a really huge sensation on the internet. And so I imagine if you look it up, the T Goods experience, it'll be one of her most viewed videos. I think it had like, yeah. Do you know how many it's up to?
No, but I'm so curious now. I just remember the comments in there. They were like, "Oh my God, that couple is so cute. Like, that's how your boo should look at you."
Yeah, I did. I was like, I love this woman, this goddess woman.
Because you were the only one that, like, one of the only guys that actually wasn't trying to be hard and like act like you didn't care. Which, by the way, like, if a girl's dancing sexy up on you, acting hard is like not.
Stoicism is not the best look when you're
you.
receiving romantic gestures. No, stoicism is not the right view. But yeah, no, I definitely relate to this whole, like, I'm not good enough to show up and meet the entry criteria. And even as a coach, like, or as a gym owner, I've thought like, well, you know, like, why do people feel like they have to be super fit before they come in? That doesn't make any sense. Yet, like, all you have to do is throw me into a new environment, and I'm like, I'm not good enough to even go to the basic class. Don't take me to a salsa event. Like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Ooh,
I know.
Fun.
When lockdown is over, I'm committing to a salsa night with you, Hallie, and our friends Jesse and Maisha. It's got to go down.
Yes.
You know,
okay, I would be so excited.
Count it. We're here, and it is official. Okay, so now that we've sufficiently gone down a tangent, I'm going to bring it back to your history. So you've spent about 2 years. The point I wanted to make earlier was that this experience of feeling awkward in a gym is not unusual to you. It's not unusual to coaches. Not everybody, most people are going to have this like trial by fire. I'm a complete novice and unknown, and I walk in and I eventually step into the experience. Where were you in your life before we go past the feeling of a novice? Where were you in your life and in your health that was like, you know what? I'm going to go to a gym. I'm going to like go to a gym.
Let's see. It wasn't actually too healthy. It was in college when I was at, actually, I think my thinnest as an adult, and I was still trying to reach like middle school weight. I was definitely in the college like mindset. Well, I shouldn't even say college mindset. I was just in a very like female mindset of like, I need to lose weight. I need to be this super tiny thing. And my ethnicity is Korean, and I was really into K-pop at the time. And it's just, growing up, there's a lot of influence to be the tiniest, meekest, cutest little girl ever. And I just couldn't ever live up to those standards. And it was like, okay, I got to go to the gym, got to run on the treadmill, like, 5 miles a day, and, try to lose as much weight as possible, and like eat like nothing. Except the problem is I love eating. So that definitely didn't work out.
It's a really tough challenge.
That's just never going to be a thing. Thank God. So those were my first forays. Those were the first reasons I went into a gym. And then, later on, I went through like a very intense like weight gain after like a huge bout of depression and things like that. And, that was also another push to go like, okay, there is something like psychologically and physically out of control. Like something's not right. You just know when your body's like, there's something not good here. Like the reasons I'm doing these things aren't motivated from a good place.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, cool. Let's actually take this. That's when I actually said, let's take this seriously. Let's not just bullshit it and like try all the Pinterest tips that I see and just look at it on surface level. Let's actually go deeper and try to understand what's happening in your body and stuff. So I would say there's like 2 evolution points that I would look back on.
The first one's just making the decision to do it. And the second one is to decide that you're going to empower yourself with knowledge of the subject.
Yeah. First one was very surface level. Second level was let's go deeper.
So far, you and I are right on track.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah, same thing. Because it was like, first was just going because I felt that I just assumed that I needed to go. I was taking martial arts. I was an athlete. Like I should be going to the gym. Um, and then in the self exploration, it was like, for me, it was magazine articles, because I didn't like, the internet wasn't populated full of, at least I didn't know how to access or find blogs that were offering good training information. It was usually like stuff out of Muscle and Fitness magazine. Do this, 3-day split or 5-day split for the next 8 weeks and just repeat as needed. And of course, you'll just always get bigger and better. And then, of course, I didn't just get bigger and better. And in fact, I didn't, I was making progress sheer by beginner's luck. And then it was just like, I enjoyed it though. It was tough. And it felt like a strategy problem. And then I was like, oh, it's just like tactics and tools. Okay. Like, well, I know how to get better at something, baseball, or I know how to pursue a skill. I was a bowler too. Another like very skill oriented sport. It's like repetition is the key. And I was like, all right, well, just get more reps at this. And then it was the decision to empower myself with more knowledge, to take a step deeper. You meet a couple of influential people in your life, even if it's just one person that says, here's just like a little peek through the window, and you go, oh wow, there's like all this stuff I could be learning over there. And I just decided from that point that I was going to go forward. And so you decide you're going to empower yourself. You're going to learn more about it. What was the step that you took?
Actually, thinking about this, I'm also going to add in another point. There's a very physiological reason that I was able to get in deeper. The surface level stuff, when I was just doing workouts for looks and just following, like basic articles and tips, I never enjoyed working out on those. People talk about like the runner's high or like the exercise, good feel, like endorphins and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't actually access that till the weightlifting started, and that's also the let's go deeper moment. So I would point out, it's like, if you can find the thing that gives you that endorphin rush, whether it's running, weightlifting, whatever, that definitely helps to make this stuff addictive. And that I would say helped me start building the habit. I forget if that what your original question was, because I was just thinking about, oh yeah, habit building.
The next step after interest, after like not after interest, after the decision to go deeper. The trigger for you to go deeper, it sounds like, was like getting that feeling that, oh yeah, that felt good.
And I was like, oh, this can be a thing.
Yeah.
So it actually kind of worked. Like those things kind of had to work together, right? Like I wasn't going to be, even though I had actually tried to make that same decision before, right? Like even at that surface level point, I wanted to be able to work out regularly. But it wasn't until I got the endorphin rush and I was like, ooh, I kind of like this thing. And then the second decision to make after that was, hey, you can't half-ass this. You have to full-ass this, and you have to really incorporate it and understand that this is going to be a part of your lifestyle. Because I was always like trying to like stuff in like an hour workout at the end of my day as just sort of like this side note. And sometimes I still do that, but I think of myself now as a person with a very active lifestyle. And, I'm really open to, taking trips that are like, purely for hiking or something like that, or bike riding. And having the lifestyle change really opened the door to bring more fitness into my life.
And you're hitting on a good point, and one that we hammer home all the time at Recess, is that being fit doesn't mean just working out and doing exercise. I mean, there are things that create a tremendous amount of health and vitality in yourself, and that is improving your health all around. And like you said, it could be hiking, it could be bike rides, it could be frolicking in the sun with your friends, doing hula hoop, dancing, or whatever. So there's so many I think one thing in the evolution process is our minds start to open up as to what qualifies as exercise, or what qualifies as to working out, and what is actually driving us towards where we want to go, and the things that we think are taking us where we want to go, but are actually hindering our progress towards those things. And I'm imagining from your perspective, because we're sharing a similar trajectory, it's that there's a lot of trial and error at first. And it's because you aren't doing it well, you don't see what you need from it, and you just kind of keep like bumping up against this edge, because you're like, yeah, but I got to follow what did you say, what
Like, it
app?
was like,
Pinterest. I got to
yeah.
follow this Pinterest thing, or
Mhm.
I have to follow this bodybuilding thing because I want to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. God damn it.
Yes,
I
I
want
do.
to,
I
I
do
want
want
to
to look
look
like
like
Arnold
Arnold. So I
Schwarzenegger.
have to do Arnold presses exactly like he said in the magazine. I can't try handstands out in a field to get, you know what I mean? I can't like, again, just go chase a dog or something silly. But now in the
Yes.
evolution process, you're like, oh, I'm not just exercising. I'm starting to identify as being a fit person. And a fit person is more than just like biceps and quads and glutes. It's like, I want to be able to go on a hike that is multiple weeks long and not have my body just, break down halfway through. So I'm trying to keep the story like nosing towards where we intersect. Were you living in Memphis when you started weightlifting?
No, it was actually a little bit before Memphis. I think I really only started identifying that as a thing I really, really liked about 6 months, 3 months before I moved to Memphis.
And so you moved to Memphis from Los Angeles or the LA area.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the funny part was the weekend before I moved out to Memphis, I broke my ankle, and that really just screwed everything up. Physicality for a long time.
Mm-hmm. So
Because it was also my first broken bone, so I didn't know exactly what I was doing. Plus, I was moving like crazy.
Yeah. I also think it's worth noting that when things like that happen, one, you break an ankle, or you move, or both, those are times where like exercise progress, we can want to try to force habits or force results, and it's just kind of like not in the cards. And so a lot of times we can be put a lot of pressure on ourselves to keep things going when it's a little unfair to ourselves. So you break your ankle, you move to Memphis, Tennessee for work, and you're on the shelf, as they say, for a couple of months because you are healing from an injury, and then you start a gym search.
Mm-hmm. When I was looking for something, I have several criteria. I want one gym where I can just kind of go and use the machines, lift weights, and like not talk to anyone. So like, your 24-hour fitnesses, your LA Fitness, that kind of thing. That's like my basic go-to foundation. But like we talked about, it's like when you start kind of exploring into things and you start finding out what you like, I really liked obstacle course racing. Not that I had done like an actual full one like Spartan races. I just remember I like obstacles. So I started Googling obstacle course race, and Recess was one of the names that popped up and actually had like a site to it. Everything else became like dead links, or like the phone number was like not connecting anywhere. It was so strange. So I was like, okay, cool, let's check out Recess. And I forget if I sent an email or something or whatever. I just remember we like made an appointment somehow, and I came to Recess to check it out.
Yeah. What before you walked in, did you have any imagination of what you were walking into? And then afterwards, like, what had changed?
I had no expectations because I was definitely in that self-conscious mode. I was just sort of like, okay, cool. I've never been to like such a personal gym like this before. I really hope that it's not super awkward. And walked in. Sorry, what was the second question? What was my perspective afterwards?
Yeah, exactly. After seeing the facility, after meeting us.
It was really nice. You guys were really sweet. I remember this, and I forget if it was that first day that you and I talked about you going to Korea.
Yeah.
Yeah, was that it? I just remember thinking like, what?
Yeah.
That definitely made an impression that you were like, are you Korean? And it didn't go the usual way that conversation goes. It was like, I studied in Korea, and I was like, you're kidding me.
Yeah. it was tactically an advantage, and not on purpose.
Look at that.
I am actually wearing my Yonsei sweater. It was not intentional. I noticed it before we started. I said, oh, it's just, but yeah, it's hard to be, and this is the fun part of the podcast. Okay. Like, I didn't realize how much moving to Korea would impact me. I went out of curiosity for sure, and out of circumstances. I graduated college in the worst semester to graduate in the history of graduating from university in the modern era. I had taken an internship while I was in school. It was a full-time work experience internship that lasted 6 months with FedEx in their internal audit department. And this was in the fall of 2007. And the thought behind this was this experience is fall 2007. This experience is going to basically guarantee me a job. That was because 10 to 12 people got it. There were thousands of applicants, and me landing this internship was a big deal. And I remember thinking, this is like, you can just write my check to my job after graduation. You know what I mean? It was like,
Yeah.
because the narrative at the time was you go to college, you get a degree, and then you go to work in your field, and like you get a job in your field. And like, that's how it works. That's the narrative. That's the process. And like, that's what I had no reason to doubt. Then you throw on top the internship. I'm like, that's icing on, that's a cherry on top. Like, I'm definitely getting a job. But the trade-off was that I had to push my graduation back one semester, because even though I received school credit for the internship, it still didn't cover all my course requirements, especially as you're getting towards your capstone classes and all those things. So it was like, all right, well, you'll just graduate in the winter of 2008. They allowed me to take my spring semester. They allowed me to graduate with my classmates. They gave me special permission to graduate before I completed it. So I wanted to walk with all the people that I came in with. And then I studied in the summer, and I had literally like 3 more classes. It was 9 hours of school left in the fall of 2008. And my roommate and I, at the time, it was October, and we were watching every day the housing bubble happen. And so the housing bubble had all these trigger effects on the credit with credit default swaps, and everybody going belly up on all these basically like bets that they had made that these mortgages wouldn't default. And then there's like a huge hiring freeze. So all of a sudden I went from being guaranteed a job to like, there are literally no jobs, like no job, people getting laid off by the tens of thousands. And then there were people with 10 years work experience applying for unpaid internships at companies just to be around when they started hiring again. Because it was like, well, hey, I might have some cash reserves because I've been working for 10 years, but I don't have a job, and the only people that are hiring or offering work are not paying. I just want to be around when the hiring and the money starts flowing again. And so now what I thought was a guaranteed thing with graduating with this internship, I'm walking myself into a job. I'm like competing against 10 years experience. I thought my 6 months was going to be the guarantee. So one of my best friends in college, the elusive, what do you call him? The unicorn, Sam, my friend.
Oh my God. He doesn't exist, by the way.
He doesn't exist. He does and he doesn't. It's a complicated thing.
It's not real.
But he gives me this idea that we are travel buddies. He gives me the idea that I should teach English in Korea. He was like, you can pay back any school debt you have. You can travel in Asia, and that's so amazing. And you can experience a new culture. And when all this blows over, like, you can come back into the job market. And I was like, that sounds like a brilliant idea. And so I moved there. I was there in less than 90 days. Now, here's where I'm revisiting where I started, which was, I didn't realize how much that would impact me. I lived in a suburb of Seoul, and in my neighborhood, besides a few other of the teachers that were like located in the same geographical area, like I was the only Caucasian and definitely the only American in my neighborhood. And so for the first time in my life, it was like flipped, where like I wasn't just it's one thing to be like a minority in a room or in a school. It's another to be in a minority in a city, like a tiny minuscule minority, and to try to understand cultural norms from the flipped perspective. And so I aspired to buy in all of the way and decided I want to go to the graduate school. And once I got into like this multicultural experience, it wasn't just Korea now. It was like we had represented over like 20 countries in less than 50 people. It was like every other person was from this new country. And I imagine if growing up in LA, like you have a much different experience than growing up in Memphis, Tennessee. And so it was just good for me to have this depth of understanding about a culture that wasn't my own, because it gave me so much clarity and ways to reconfigure my own growing up in my own culture. And so the funny thing is that when you spend so much time in a country and in a culture that is geared towards seeing the subtle, because a lot of people, the thing that a lot of people don't understand is, especially in Asian cultures, is that you don't just outwardly blurt things. You don't just say things. Like, you say things without saying them. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that happen in language that are implied. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. But there's definitely a polite connotation, although what is considered polite and rude is a little bit different.
Yeah. Well, I imagine in family circles, it's also going to be different. Yeah. You're going to be way more direct and blunt with your family members. But like when you're with not strangers, but community members, it was like one of my best examples is that when we were out in business school, we would go on like hueshik. Hueshik was like business gathering after class. So I got introduced to this hueshik culture, and basically I learned that the oldest person wouldn't just say like, tonight I want everyone to go to galbijip or Korean barbecue spot and I want to eat together. They don't just say, hey, I want to eat together, let's go out to eat. They'll just kind of stare off into space and say, I've been really thinking about barbecue today. And then, of course, if you're next down in line, you have to be like, oh, we should get everybody together to go eat.
That shit drives me nuts. I'm like, can you be assertive and like ask people? No, they always got to be like coy. That's the freaking word. They got to be coy, and then you got to be like, oh, well, let's go do this thing then. And they're like, oh, okay.
Yes.
And you're supposed to be the leader.
I know, and that's the thing. It's like it was knowing how to recognize the subtle, and again, like, no surprise to someone who grew up ethnically Korean. There's just so much subtlety in even ethnicity beyond just language and culture. There's subtleties in physical features. There's subtleties in style, like the way that people dress, the culture influences. Like, so if you grew up watching K-pop, and like a style of dress in K-pop, much different than you grew up like worshiping anime, like just the way people are going to show up, the things that there's so much different. So we're going to loop this all the way back. I meet Grace Lee for the first time, and it's just like, I just know that you're Korean. Like,
it was shocking to meet someone who was, one, white, and the fact that they knew more Korean than me. I was like, ooh. And the fact that I met you in Tennessee, of all places. I didn't meet you in California, in Los Angeles, where I would expect that a little bit. No, right. I moved to Memphis, and one of the first people I really like get to know, I'm like, how does he know more Korean than I do?
What is this about? What's this guy? And so I'm like, you're there, and I'm like not wanting to just blurt out that, it's like, you're Korean. I have all this. I just want to tell you, like, let's just have this shared connection.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah. I was like, don't be that person, man. Just like play it cool. And then, but I don't know what was exactly happening, but it was like, it was just before our interaction was about to end for the day. Like, you've come in, you've checked it out. I've shown you around. We've had some conversation about your history, your goals, what you're looking to get out of it. And then I just like, kind of like, you're Korean, right? Yeah. And you're like, yeah. And so I imagine that like that shared connection is something that influenced your decision to continue to investigate becoming a member of our community. But I don't imagine that our shared Korean connection alone would have been enough to keep you invested in our community. So if you could you speak a little bit from your experience about what the community that you walked into, and what are the things that have kept you involved and invested?
I would say the knowledge that you guys have and you guys share, the kind of openness to explore oneself and pursue our own ideas was something that was incredibly unique, because I'm not a group exercise person at all. I don't, I've tried out for sports teams and things like that, and I still, I'm kind of a little bit iffy with that. I'm very individualistic. So this was a really unique experience in where I actually enjoyed being around a group of people for classes and things like that. And again, like in those classes, you guys kind of create the expectation of like, we're going to do these things. However, if your body is saying something different, listen to it. And that was very refreshing. And it was, I know that you guys also, you and Hallie both really care about mindfulness, and we get to talk about those things and explore those things a lot. So kind of the intersection between like mindfulness and physicality really helps. Sorry, the dog's behind me. Not that you can see her.
Yeah, blending into the fire.
She's a hellhound. So I think that value for me was huge. Also, you guys are just really, you guys know what you're doing. So anytime I have questions about like an actual like, hey, how do I squat this thing? How do I deadlift this thing? You guys have like actual, like, you guys are like, oh yeah, you do A, B, C, D, E. And I'm like, I've been trying to figure that out for like a year.
and part of it is letting you figure it out until you're like at the edge of your knowledge, and getting you to, so the phases of coaching may be similar to phases of anything really. Like you might be able to speak to this as your experience in a user designer perspective. Like stage one is technical. You're like just trying to understand how the things work.
Mm-hmm.
What are the pieces to this? How do they function? How do they interplay with each other? And you think about it like the system. So when I first got introduced to training, or not first introduced, as I matured in my training, part of the evolution was thinking about the body as a system and not just as a sum of different components that were individual components. And then once I started thinking about the body as a mechanical system, it was an easy next step to think about the body, in a holistic system beyond just the physical side. And one of the things that we aspire to imbue on other people is that the more you start to think about your self as a whole system, not a separate physical, separate mental, separate emotional, and separate spirit system. When you think about them in a whole, it offers clarity in progress, because if you happen to be strong in another area, you can take the same principles and techniques that make you strong emotionally or spiritually, and you can laterally shift those principles into something that makes you strong physically or mentally. And being able to help people think systematically. And then the second thing is that as a coach, I went through a phase where I wanted to cram all of the knowledge into your mind, but I realized that my learning came through the experience of having done it, not from being told exactly what it is, what I should expect. And so I have always, and you've been great at, I imagine it's a mutual thing, us holding the space for it, but you being willing to be assertive and ask for knowledge that you want, not just like, oh, what are you going to tell me today, coach? It's like, no, I'm here because I'm on a path of learning, and I believe and trust that as a resource from a knowledge perspective, and just as a guide from an experience perspective, that we're going to be there to support you. What would you say one, like, and I imagine that, you probably had a passion towards mental health before, this isn't just something that might be new. But can you walk me through the things that you've been exposed to from like a technical perspective, the methods that you've learned with us, and the ones that you have really loved, and the ones that you've liked that you didn't expect to like?
Ooh, interesting. Specifically around the mindfulness aspect, or just things in general?
Methods that we've taught in general. And I mean, in this case, I'm thinking more physical.
Let's see. Well, one of the things that I didn't expect to like, but I do really like, is the animal movement stuff. Kind of, so the animal movement was sort of like an introduction to me to move my body in ways that I don't normally move it. So to me, that was a big shift for myself, and a big something to definitely explore and add into my regimen. Like I love to warm up with movements now because it's so, it uses so many different muscles and things of your body and really helps you kind of figure out like, oh wow, that's really stiff today and things like that. Breathing, the breathing stuff is I forget if that specifically was the thing I was most resistant to, or if it was the meditation thing. I think you remember this. Like I was like, no, I don't want to do that thing. Was it breathing or was it meditation?
Well, it was like, I think when we laid them over the top of each other.
Okay, then I was like, no,
Yeah.
I don't want to be, don't make me sit for like 3 minutes and I'm like, do nothing. I was like, I hate that so much. But both of those have been really extremely important. And breathing now is one of the most important aspects of my physical health that I can think of. Especially because after my flu this past winter, I seem to have asthma now, which I think is crazy that I developed asthma after a flu. Not sure what that's about. But anyways, what I think is interesting is with all the explorations of breathing we've been doing, I've tried like the deep breath stuff, but I've also tried the Wim Hof stuff that we've hit upon. And actually doing some research, not quoting anything, I'm not a doctor, anyone who's listening to this.
Yeah. This is just for educational and entertainment purposes.
Yeah. They mentioned that instead of trying to get more oxygen into your body, the fact that your muscles are the reason you have asthma is like your muscles are super constricted in your lungs and there's not enough air going through. They talked about one potential way to help that through, your own practice and not necessarily through medicine is to get more carbon dioxide in your body, actually, right? The stuff that you're breathing out. And I remember in the Wim Hof methods and things like that, through those breathing exercises, you're actually oxidizing your blood or something like that. You're keeping in things. So it's not about, no, I'm not going to misquote this. It's just, I remember there's something specifically about, you hold your breath after like 30 intense breaths, and you hold it for maybe like a minute, 2 minutes, and your body chemistry is changing a little bit.
Yes.
So still exploring that, but I think it's really interesting. And so far it actually kind of has helped me a little bit. I have to explore it more. So breathing has been a very interesting, like the methodologies you guys have taught, the ones that we've explored together with Wim Hof. That's been a big change. So animal movement, breathing, meditation, I'm still kind of going into, but that one I was the most resistant to, but I've definitely come around.
I've had so I think one challenge about meditation is that we get wrapped up in this idea of what meditation has to be.
Yes.
And for a long time, it was like, I believed that meditation was sitting cross-legged and closing my eyes and only, and breathing and not having thoughts. And that idea, the idea of that just like turned me off so much. Like nothing about that compelled me for so long. It was like, yeah, it's like, one, it's uncomfortable to cross my legs and to sit for a long period of time. Two, like, you think this shit's going to turn off? You think this mind is going to stop having thoughts? Like, get real. And then it was like, it doesn't seem to have any utility, because I was a very like performance minded person. But then I learned that meditation is doing nothing, essentially. The act of choosing to do nothing or to narrow the scope of what you're doing down. So I've thought of a great introduction that is, I believe in changing habits to rituals. I find that to be very powerful. Habits are things we do mindlessly. Rituals are things that we do on purpose. It's a set of behaviors that is done intentionally.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you have habits like chewing my fingernails is a habit. It's a mindless activity. Drinking coffee can be a habit. I like, it's just on and I'm just like pouring it as I walk by. But the only thing I need to do to change a habit of drinking coffee to a ritual, something that it feeds me instead of takes away, is put intention behind it. And so for me, creating a French press coffee became an active form of meditation, because I was choosing to narrow the scope of my activity and of my focus down. And the way that I did that was making coffee, French press, a 5 sense experience. I made sure to feel the warmth of the glass, or to feel the steam on my face, or to smell it at each individual stage, to listen to the crackle of the beans as the water touched it for the first time, measuring things attentively, getting the water temperature just right. That itself became a meditation. I'm moving, I'm doing things, but I'm really honed in and focused. And then once I've done that, to finish my meditation, I will hold my cup. And then over time, as my mobility's gotten better and things, I've started assuming sitting positions. I'm much more 5 years in Asia, sitting on the floor will really help. I mean, just being real, my mobility got so much better, and it had very little to do with exercise. My mobility got better because of the actions and activities that I was doing and sitting on the floor just by default. So I'm much more comfortable, but my meditation has become my coffee has become my meditation.
Yeah.
You know?
Because I completely agree with you. I think the biggest resistance I had to that was exactly what you said, which was that you had to think nothing, like that everything had to shut off, because when everyone talks about meditation, that's what they say. That's like the big trendy thing, like you just don't think about anything, but that's not necessarily true. And I would definitely encourage anyone that if you're approaching meditation for the first time, hey, if you can get to a state of nothing, that's amazing. But
Yeah.
and maybe that's for you, but for other people, it's not necessarily about feeling nothing. It's about being incredibly present. And like you said, with the French press stuff, everything just sort of becomes heightened in that moment. What's funny is some people kind of experience that through drugs, or through other like super sensory sensations, sexual experiences. When you're like in that state, I know other, you can be like very aware of what's happening. So all these things might have already hinted to you what that feels like. But yeah, like you said, doing it with ritual, with intention, and actually being able to start tapping into that kind of present mindedness is incredible.
Well, I find that exercise is a perfect vessel for teaching people this. It's like, because there's immediate feedback. When you sit down and you do and you just sit down and for 3 minutes with your eyes closed, there's very little feedback. In fact, there's a lot of like stuff that's bouncing around in your brain. So physicality is a way of tapping into that thing. One thing I will say is that once you know that it's there, people then start to hit the button a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, they go, oh, I have to keep pursuing this avenue to get to this space. And what I encourage people to do is use physical practices are beautiful at finding this state of meditation, of flow, and there are other ways to get there. So if you know the way this way, you know the way there, you can find other activities to work yourself to the same place. And coffee is one of them for me.
Physical practices, that makes a lot of sense. The breathing, the Wim Hof thing was definitely brings you right into that present.
You got that right. I mean, now first of all, this has been an awesome conversation. I don't want to just close.
Wow, it's almost over.
Yeah.
It's been on.
I want to ask, I've asked everybody that comes on the show, we've talked about some serious stuff. We talked about some fun stuff, but I want to think about what you do activity wise for like true joy and fun. Can be physical, doesn't have to be. How do you like to play? What do you like to do to have fun?
Dancing. Very silly dancing is a key part. And okay, this is going to sound, I know it doesn't have to be physical, but I swear to God, throwing around weights is definitely hits that little Napoleon complex inside that's just like, So silly dancing, throwing around weights are two of the most consistent things that I can do for fun, that really hit those points for me. They're even on what I call like a wins list. So it's like, if I ever need like a pick-me-up, I can do those things and they'll be sure to like give me that little endorphin rush that will kind of like set me straight.
Awesome. Now, before we close, if somebody has connected with your story, if somebody has connected with you either from a personal perspective, a professional perspective, could you tell people where they might be able to find you if you're open?
Sure. So I have an Instagram account. I have two that you can reach me at. One is called aka.moxie, spelled Moxie. The other one that's probably going to be a little easy to remember and is my physical blog is Noodle Bod.
Yes.
Because this body is made of noodles.
Got to.
It is, especially during furlough time. So
Yeah.
many ramen noodles. I'm like 50% ramen noodles right now.
Yeah. And I guess last question is if somebody was considering working with us, if somebody was considering just looking more into us, what advice would you give them and what encouragement would you give them?
I would advise them to talk to you guys, because I think that, websites and like emails are great for a lot of companies, but for you guys, the truest experience is when I can actually talk to you guys and interact. Sorry, what was the second question? It was how should they reach out, and then what?
That was the advice. And then, the other was, what did I just say?
I don't know.
Encourage, whether it's to reach out with us or not, what would you say to encourage the person that frankly is where you started, is nervous about feeling like they're not fit enough to get involved in a gym or a gym community, feeling like they're unsure and not sure what to do? What would you do to encourage that person?
Definitely find your fun. You definitely got to break away from worrying about how anyone else thinks about you, because that, like we talked about, the self-conscious thing was huge. It's about finding your fun.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Grace Lee, everybody. Miss Noodlebot, aka Moxie. Thank you for coming on. I had a blast, and I imagine whoever followed us all the way is going to get a lot out of this podcast. That's it for this week. We will catch up with you next time. Thank you, Grace.
Bye, Brooks.
Thanks for checking out another Serious Fun conversation. I just wanted to remind you that this show is brought to you by you. If you'd like to support the show, you can rate us 5 stars, you can leave a kind comment, or you can share it with a friend. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel at Brooks Meadows on the YouTube. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.